Week 2 is in the books. Jonathan Henschel joined by Caleb Johnson. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Great. Let's break it down. 6 games, as always. Everybody now has played 2 games. No Grizzlies this week. Rockets played twice. Initial thoughts before we go game-by-game breakdown. What do you got?
This is a pretty good week of basketball. Glad to see the Rockets finally at action get 2 games out there. So they split 1-1. Some teams with some shocking losses, I think, and some teams with some left to prove, I think, going forward. So I think we didn't see a ton in week 2. But I think week 3 will be a big, separator for kind of who's who in the standings. But it's still a good week of basketball.
I agree. You and I were both looking at what our projected playoff bracket would be, and there's definitely still some questions around several teams. Only a few teams have actually had their full roster together. And perfectly on cue, one of those is now the Bulls, who had all but one guy play. Carson Monk was still out with the ankle injury, but everybody else was there. And what a game that was. Probably game of the year so far. Your team, the Bucks, you're now 2-0 and could easily be 0-2. 2 last-second shots didn't fall from the opposing teams, and you have 2 overtime wins to start the season. Unbelievable. This game was electric. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, got to give credit to the Bulls because they played, in honestly, a fantastic game. I mean, the way they shot, the way they played. I mean, they win that game probably 9 times out of 10. I think it just so happens we had Billy Baptist that this weekend, and he had 42 points. Definitely carried us in the first half when kind of our offensive lulls hit, and then hit some big shots down the stretch. But I mean, they were hitting everything. I feel bad for my brother because he was on the wrong end of some threes in his face. The Munoz brothers were dangerous, and Seth was great. I think Nick Crow is a great addition to their team, and then Bobby played well. I mean, they all played well. I mean, if they show up like that, they're going to beat a lot of good teams. But and I also just got a shout out on our team, CC Malone, hitting 2 of the biggest shots potentially of the season for us, just 2 back-to-back threes when we got down in overtime. So he definitely was clutch, but it was a gutsy win, and I mean, I think Billy was a big factor of that. But I think we defended well and made enough plays down the stretch.
Yeah, I know your team, the Bucks, won this game, and you're sitting at the top of the standings at 2-0, but I'm actually going to talk more about the Bulls, I think, in this segment. The Bulls have had 3 good players now for 3 consecutive seasons, and it didn't seem like they had the right pieces around them last year and kind of cleaned house and brought in a new group. Nick Crow, I think it's Crow, it might be Crowy. I should probably ask him so we don't keep butchering it on air, but he's going to be a huge piece of things. 12-7, he was guarded by Billy Baptist pretty much the whole game.
Yeah.
I mean, if he is and I'm not sure he's necessarily their 4th option, but for the sake of referring to those other 3 that have played together, if he is your 4th option, he's as good a 4th option as any team has probably. He's a great fit for them. He's all over the boards like crazy. And then how about Miggy Munoz just letting ball fly, knocked down a couple shots
he was huge
in the first half and second half there. I mean, absolutely outstanding shot making from the Bulls, especially in that first half. I don't ever remember a first half of basketball like that, especially in a 12 o'clock game. That was electric.
16 threes from the Bulls, and I'm pretty sure 10 of them were in the first half. I don't know if that number's correct, but 9 or 10 of them maybe in the first half. It was back and forth for about 7 or 8 minutes there to end the half.
Doing some math, I think I'm getting 8 in the first half.
So it was 8 and 8
out of what? It's either 16 or 17. So basically 50% from the field in the first half from 3. It felt like higher than that.
Yeah.
But one of the themes that I noticed, you have 12 teams. You have 5 teams that are 2-0 and 5 teams that are 0-2. We did not expect that coming into week 2. For me, the Bulls are definitely the 1-0-2 team that I don't think is panicking at all.
No, they look great with the 4 roster.
Absolutely, and I mean, you could argue Spurs and Bucks are 2 potentially Final 4 teams, and so you certainly are not hanging your heads being 0-2. There's some other teams where we said after week 3 we'd hit the panic button. It's only after week 2, so we're not there yet. Give us one more week, and we'll start doing that for you. But the Bulls are not, I don't think, by any means in that position. But Bulls look fantastic. It's interesting to sort of think about some of those matchups they're going to have here and how they're going to stack up against some of these teams they weren't deep enough to play with last year. But Bucks are 2-0, just phenomenal pair of wins. I mean, the way regulation ended in both those games, neither game should have realistically ever gone to overtime if you look back and see the sequence of events. But 2-0 nonetheless. So Billy Baptist, I would have to say, is your lock for Player of the Week with a ridiculous stat line.
It's going to be hard to pass up on that one for sure.
Happy 35th, Billy. His birthday weekend, and he drops 7 more than years he's lived on this earth. So good to see him back, and I'm sure for you guys that's nice to have a guy like that in your group.
Yes.
Heat and Warriors matched up. This is another game where someone was going to go 0-2. About halfway through the first half, it looked to me like the Warriors were in trouble. Things were not clicking. Guys were yelling at each other, and the Warriors have had chemistry issues in the past. We don't say that to be critical. It's just the reality of their situation, and they've got some guys that have never played together before. I was as impressed by what they did in the last, I'd say, 2/3 of that game as anyone on Sunday. Their ability to sort of right the ship, figure that out. They got a lot of big boys. They got a lot of big bodies. For them to figure that out and run away from a Heat team that is significantly more athletic, I thought was impressive. So Warriors get a much-needed win. They win 65-52.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the guys to shout out, and just looking at the stat sheet, I didn't realize how great of a game he had, was Quan Shaw. I mean, on and off the court, I think he's the vocal leader they needed to kind of rally the troops. He had 20 points. He was 9 of 10 from the field, John. Super efficient game, 2 threes. I think he was the key cog in their I think it was an 18-2 run at one point in the second half. Had the pleasure of calling that one, but Quan really carried him in that second half, despite Tyree Mosley struggling from 3. I mean, he still put up 15 points, but we haven't really seen Tyree at his peak yet. So Warriors kind of escaped with the win, but the Heat are an interesting team because the talent's there, the athleticism is there, but they just really haven't put it together. Terrell's had 2 amazing games, but who will be their consistent number 2? I think for me is the biggest question. Is it going to be Springer? Is it CJ Link? Is it Alonzo King? Like, they have a lot of good scores, but who will be the consistent number 2 scorer for them?
Yeah, and one of the things we like about this league is it's deep this year. There's not a lot of free wins, and the Heat are just, a lot of teams are, but in the midst of that part of their schedule where you lose games to the Bucks and the Warriors, there's no shame in that, and you get a really good Bulls team lingering. They play the Nets in week 4, and then they play the Spurs in week 5. I mean, what a difficult start to the season schedule. And I say start, that's half their schedule, so that's just that's the caliber of the league you have. Yeah, the disappointing thing for me with the Heat has been, and this happens in a league like this, there's always a sort of, there's some mystique when you look at who's going to show up every week. You just don't know, but neither of their bigs have showed up, and CJ Link can certainly play down in the post, but I think the Heat would be significantly better if they did have that big and if Lamarius was there, but he hasn't been. And when you're playing a team like the Warriors, they were only out-rebounded by 8, but I think they're really going to struggle if they don't get that piece, especially as the league's gotten bigger and more physical and stronger. But you're absolutely right about Quan Shaw. I don't know what Tyree can do from behind the three-point line. The Warriors don't have a ton of above-average three-point shooters. They're really going to be a team that pounds the ball inside and beats you on the glass. And if Quan can consistently shoot from 3, that gives him another option. If he does not do that, and you take away Tyree on the perimeter, it's going to be hard for the Warriors to score in bunches. So they kind of got an impressive big 3 of their own, I would say, to these Warriors. 3 all-league players.
We haven't even mentioned Latrell yet. I think Latrell, probably for his standards, I would say probably was disappointed with his offensive game. I think he was a good facilitator in that zone with 4 assists, 11 rebounds. I mean, he kind of did a lot of the intangible things in that game. Maybe not score, but he's another guy that can easily score 25 and 12, on any given night.
Yeah, he's in the discussion every year for leading the league in rebounding, and for him to have 11 rebounds with the team they have, they've got a lot of good rebounders on that team. So, going to be exciting. We won't talk too much about it yet, but to see him and Trey Johnston get to match up next week, we're excited about week 3. But we'll keep focusing on week 2 here for a minute. The Suns and the Nets. The gym during this game was as electric as it will ever get. There were some pretty memorable moments. I think the Jared Harris I have that right. His and one there that he had was ridiculous.
Kind of threw it up,
Yeah.
and the ref kind of hesitated a little bit whether it's a block or charge. That was an electric play.
The place absolutely erupted. That's one of those kind of once in a season type circus shots that went in. That was kind of right at the point where everything was going the Nets' way.
Yep.
So this was a tale of two games. I don't remember how much the Nets were trailing by early in the second half, but for the first 25, 27 minutes, something like that, the Suns were definitely the better team. They weren't even playing their best basketball, but they were absolutely the better team. It seemed like, there was a stretch there where the Suns struggled to control their emotion and the game flipped. The game ended 14-14 in fouls. I mean, I know there were some frustrations from them with the officiating, but it was lopsided early on. Really, the first half was lopsided in the Suns' favor, and the second half was lopsided in the Nets' favor. They ended up dead even, but the Suns just couldn't recover with some. There were just some guys were getting into it with each other, didn't handle some calls the best, and it just distracted from what, in my opinion, was again a very dominating 25, 28 minutes to start that game. The Nets were definitely on their heels. The Suns, for all intents and purposes, were the better team in that game, but the Nets finished strong, and they're 2-0, knocking off the Pistons and the Suns.
Yeah, I mean, I think before I say anything else, I think I need to issue an apology to the Nets. In last week's podcast, I did say my lock of the week was the Suns. I felt very confident in Ryan and the guys from the Suns, and thinking they, we're going to come in, and they played well. They played well for like you said, 27 minutes, but. The Nets played fantastic, and they proved me wrong. Martavis and Sammy really turned it on. They kind of reached that level that I knew they could in that second half, getting out in transition, hitting threes. I love Mook Lawrence's game, just the energy he brings, the rebounding. Kind of gotten ahead of a few of the Suns players defensively. Credit the Nets because they proved me wrong. I'm sure they listened to the podcast and maybe took some motivation from that. But, I'm curious to see how both these teams respond. I mean, the Nets now have two really, really high-quality wins, I think. And the Suns have a couple tough losses, and then a matchup with the Bucks next week could be a big, big test for them to see where their season goes. I mean, coming back from 0-3 is not easy if you want to be a top 4 seed to get that bye. So I'm curious to see. I mean, it's going to be a must-win game for them. So I'm very curious to see who shows up for them and how they play and respond after starting 0-2.
It's a good thought. The Suns happen to play the Lakers in Week 4, who are also undefeated. I believe they have the Pistons the week after that, so they're certainly in the midst of a tough stretch of their schedule as well. We said this with the Nets last year. The Nets basically were a 1-2 punch. It was Laster and it was Hines, and already Mook Lawrence, who had 13 and 7 in this one, and then Jared Harris with 10. You're seeing signs of more production outside of Martavius and Sammy, and I don't think it's surprising because now this group has played together for basically 16 straight games now. But it's just good to see some other people stepping up. So if Mook can average double figures, you know what you're getting from kind of your top two guys there. And Ronnie Jackson with 8 points, he's one of the best. I mean, he's one of those guys who's always in the conversation for 6th man of the year. So I mean, just 2 outstanding wins for the Nets. Same with what I was thinking about with the Bulls there. I don't think it's panic time yet for the Suns, but it's a different feel than last year. I think just because the personnel's different. Phil, Ryan, Jay, and Jared are all the same, and as we talked about, Jameer has fit in extremely well with this team. He had 16 points,
he had a great game.
5 rebounds. He's a great passer in this offense. He'll work through the guys he needs to, but arguably we haven't seen them in the gym in person, but 2 of their, let's say 4 most talented guys we haven't seen yet. And if, say, they're there next week, what does that look like for them? So I don't think the Suns are panicking either. They just have some questions that are being asked of themselves that need to be answered. And this is not the part of the schedule here coming up with the Bucks and the Lakers where you want to be asking those questions, but they're going to have to answer them. They're going to have to answer them fast because the Suns could get off to an 0-4 start here if things don't click. I don't expect that from them.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the 2 teams they have left, I still think they're going to be there on Championship Sunday, but definitely not the way we thought they would start.
No, I mean, I think, their backs are against the wall, and I'm very curious now to see. I thought they were going to come out guns a-blazing and take care of business, but I think for my team's sake, I hope they have to maybe continue this. But no, it should be an instant classic if everyone shows up next week for both teams, and to see kind of the battle for where the seeding will lie after week 3.
I agree. I think that's one of many games to circle on the calendar for week 3. Not much to talk about in the 3 p.m. game. Lakers absolutely bushwhacked the Pistons 126-74. Pistons only had 4 guys.
Yeah.
Mark Connor was sensational. 39 points, 9 rebounds, and he was efficient from the field. Unfortunately for Mr. Nelson there, 0 for 14 from 3. Sort of
tough outing.
Yeah, tough one for him. And then good old Donald Poole had 25 points. He was 7 out of 20 from behind 3. But
good game.
It feels weird talking about individual performances and accolades from the Lakers. I mean, every single guy scored in double figures. 30 for Kawhi Blackman. I mean, he went 14-17 from the field. Half his shots were uncontested.
Wide open layups. Yeah.
21 assists from Tom Brooks is. I don't know that anyone will ever do that again.
Well, I was actually calling this game,
yeah.
and I called it an unbreakable record because I don't think anyone's going to get to 21 assists ever or even come close to that in the game. So
yeah,
good for you, Town.
I guess so. We had him down in the scorebook for 9 rebounds. If we missed one of his, he'll probably let us know because he'll want that triple-double. But the takeaway for me is there's buy-in with all these guys. LJ's there. Duckworth makes his debut, and you've got Brian Hernandez coming back next week.
I mean, Duckworth didn't play much. He didn't try much because he didn't have to. But I mean, he looked smooth. He hit his first shot of the game. He hit a 3. I mean, he's gonna be a problem in this league. And when they're all there, man, I'm very high on the Lakers. I don't know if most people are, but for some reason, a lot of people may not be. I'm very high on them. I think it's gonna work this year. I love Tone. I love his game. LJ's a great player. Kawhi was a great addition. Like, it's going to work, and I think a lot of teams are going to have a hard time stopping them when they're all their dogs are there.
Yeah, they're another one that you have to think is going to be there in the mix. They're in the midst of an interesting now stretch of their schedule. Probably should have not beaten the Warriors, being shorthanded, and they steal one there. And then we had this game circled as if the Pistons do get everybody there, especially with a guy like Capri Alston, we thought that was going to give them matchup issues. Obviously, we didn't see that, and there were no issues at all. So they are 2-0. They play the 2-0 Grizzlies with the Suns the week after the bye. And then in week 5, they play the Bucks. I mean, you're talking about an unbelievable few weeks coming up here. You could be looking at almost everybody with 2 losses here after week 4, week 5, or at least a bunch of these teams kind of pooled there in the middle. So, again, if you're the Pistons, I don't really know what to say because we don't know a lot of the guys on their team, but it can't get much worse than the first 2 weeks, and I know AP knows that, and he's going to challenge his guys, but definitely some roster-wise, some red flags here after 2 weeks, but it is only 2 weeks in, and they played from last year your 4 and your 5 seed in the league, so they've not exactly had an easy introduction, but definitely expect more from them moving forward. From a statistical standpoint, it's going to be hard to match the Lakers here for a while. Just it's such an outlier being able to score 126 points and do it so efficiently, but that's the nature of things. So the Lakers are also 2-0, and the Pistons are 0-2. How about the Rockets? We get to see the Rockets play some basketball.
Yeah, I think they look great that first game. I mean, I've seen Antonio play. Played pickup with him. Played intramurals at Olivet last year with him. I mean, he is the ultimate game managing point guard. Ultimate kind of Swiss Army knife. Can shoot it. Can drive it. Can defend. I mean, he was electric that first game. 5 of 9 from 3, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals. Just kind of did it all. I think Alex Thorson played really well. Kind of showed his versatility. 14, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, almost a triple double for him. And then honestly, some of their guards played pretty well. Some of the guys I didn't know. I mean, obviously, Bray John's a good scorer, but I think is it Ivan or Ivan Glenn played well. D'Angelo Samuel, Delano Samuels. I mean, some of those guys are pretty good players. So I was excited to see them play, and they definitely lived up to the hype that first game, and kind of took care of business early against the Celtics.
Yeah, the Rockets have a lot of good guard play. One of the things I noticed, they're a very young team, so a lot of those guards are young. You have Marshall and Thorson sort of as leaders who have that basketball experience, but Brajan's young, Ivan's young, Rashawn's young, and Delano isn't. I mean, he's 20, maybe 28, I forget, 29, something like that, but they don't have any like veterans surrounding Tone and Thorson, at least from a basketball standpoint. So they'll have some growing pains with that, but they were absolutely the better team in this game. They ended up winning by 14. They were up by, way more than that. If I remember, the halftime score was, you're up by over 20 points.
Yeah.
They just played really well in the first half. Marshall's definitely going to be one of the key guards in this league. I don't know if Alex Thorson will listen to this, but Thorson can be as good of a player as he wants to be in this type of league. He has, he'll show you lots of different things when he plays. He'll be locked in sometimes more than others, and he'll do some things out there that make you scratch your head, and he knows that. But when he's locked in, he had 11 rebounds in this game and 7 assists. He's an extremely skilled player who's handled the ball against some really good teams in his career. And you have 2 ball handlers like that, you get Tone's brother Harry into the mix, and then you get a guy like Hunter Jacobs down here. It would not surprise me at all if the Rockets were playing on the final day. But the team we saw here wasn't that.
No.
And so while they're, certainly 2 touchdowns better than the Celtics, we then saw in that second game that they're going to have some issues rebounding the ball and potentially shooting from the perimeter. For the Celtics, for me, Antonio Phillips is just, not only is he a fantastic player, he's just a class act. When you talk about him as a human being, the way he interacted with the officials and the opposing team, I was really impressed with him. We got 3 Tones in this league that are impressive.
Antonio Phillips is
That's
Tone
right.
Phillips. Okay.
You got Tone, Marshall, Brooks, and Phillips. All these guys are impressive, but Antonio Phillips he's just a class act. He really is. Watch him play sometime. He plays hard. He plays the right way, and he's quickly shown that he's playing he's going to play at the highest level for the Celtics team right now on the perimeter. And last week we said if Josh Washington could play the way he did on the inside and Jonathan Townsend could play better, that's a good sort of place to start. Townsend definitely played better.
Yep.
Still not as efficient as he wants to be, but they got nothing on the inside, unfortunately, and thought that was a good chance against an undersized Rockets team to do it. But Donald Ellis also played well. Didn't see Gavin Webb's best stuff. Didn't have the ball a whole lot in that game. So it's going to be interesting. I think the Grizzlies and the Rockets were 2 teams that the Celtics probably match up with pretty well, and just weren't able to get it done. They will open up with the Pistons, and depending on what the Pistons show up with, we don't know. I don't know if that's going to be a chance for the Celtics to get in the win column or not. Again, it's hard to know what they're going to bring to the table.
I think both those teams are going to be desperate for a win. Both the teams are 0-2, and both teams, looked good and bad at times in their first 2 weeks. So I think that'll be a good litmus test to see kind of where both those teams are at. Yeah, like you said, Antonio Phillips is going to be a really good number 1 option for them. But I think Townsend needs to be a little more efficient. Josh Washington was impressive week 1. Maybe not as impressive, didn't score. So I think the consistency from some of these younger guys as kind of their biggest question mark moving forward is, can they get some consistent guys scoring 19, 20, 21 points and have multiple guys do it, because they didn't have it against the Rockets this week.
Yeah, and they actually win the rebounding battle, but still just weren't quite able to overcome the guard play, especially of Tone Marshall in that one.
Yeah, well.
5 o'clock game. You get the Rockets again. They absolutely ran out of gas, and I think there were 2 factors. The first, it's their first week of the season. They only had 6 guys, but then what my takeaway, at least from this game, is the depth of the Spurs. All 10 guys there, all 10 guys play. Believe it was something like, I was calling the game 26-24 Spurs lead, something close to that. And at one point I mentioned on air the Spurs had all 5 of their non-starters in the game, and they closed the half on something like a 16-4 run. and they were obviously bigger, stronger, fresher, and deeper just because they had twice as many guys and had half the number of games. But Ben Green has come off the bench for them and is having an exceptional start to his season. Dennis Koger comes back. Trey Johnson a couple times showed that he wanted to be out there and was dominant when he did.
Yes.
We always know he'll step it up when he needs to. The Spurs may not have the firepower at the top they've had in the past, but hard to think that there's a deeper team out there and a team right now that, to me, seems like has really good buy-in from everybody because all 10 guys played, and it seems like they were in good spirits as they all got a chance to be out there.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, when you're leading scorer,
both games,
really, but top two leading scorers, Ben Green and Octavius Davis, come off the bench for you. I mean, that just speaks to their depth and how many guys they can throw at you. I thought Octavius played great. He's a great fit for them. Good willing passer, good rebounder, runs in transition, kind of feeds off of Dennis, I think, and Chris. Those guys love to run. And then just adding guys like Dustin's a great shooter. KT's a good driving kick. I mean, the chemistry there. Watching them for the first time for myself this year. I mean, they're going to be a very, very tough out. And I think Dennis is. I mean, what would you say? Like 60% maybe? That maybe less than that.
He'd probably tell you less. I'll give him that.
And so I mean, they're just. I mean, he had 5 threes. I mean, they're just very, very impressive. Top to bottom game for the Spurs. I think, like you said, I mean, Antonio played great. Antonio Marshall. He had 28 points, played great. I think the rest of the guys, the Rockets, kind of ran out of gas. They don't have the size and the depth to compete. With the Spurs. So, yeah, I mean, I was impressed with the Rockets because of the guys they had and the guys they potentially can bring to the table moving forward. But yeah, I think the Spurs are, I think, in my opinion, are still the clear favorites. Clear number one team in the league until somebody can prove them otherwise because they're just so talented, so deep, and have so many options and weapons they can throw at you.
Yeah, for sure. 12... No, it was more than that. It was probably 15 minutes into the first half. The Rockets were up by 1, I believe, on the Spurs. They were sort of dead even, and I know that the Spurs are still getting Dennis back, and KT are learning to play with them, but the Rockets were definitely with them for a stretch, so it shows you sort of what I think they can do and what their abilities are. But we're probably still a couple pieces away from being able to play with the Spurs for the whole game. Mm-hmm. So Rockets and Warriors are both 1-1 after week 2. Everybody else is either 2-0 or 0-2, which is crazy to think. Being honest, I liked the Nets coming into this week. I should say the Suns to beat the Nets coming into this week. I also thought the Bulls were going to be favorites over the Bucks. It took a superhero performance from Billy Baptist in that one. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, again, you have already a little bit of a separation in the standings, but that can all change in a hurry. So we're just very quickly going to hit these games. Pistons Celtics, like we talked about, I think the key for the Celtics is they need to run a little bit. They've got a lot of guards. They're athletic. They're not a huge team, and they need to take advantage of that. I don't think they've played at the pace that's going to suit them best so far. We don't know what we're going to see from the Pistons, but from what we've seen so far, the Pistons don't have a ton of athletic guard play. Mm-hmm. Again, we haven't seen their whole team. I think the Celtics' best chance is probably to run in that game, but Caleb, talk about how we got Pistons Celtics at 12 and then the Heat and the Bulls at 1. So all 4 teams are 0-2, and it feels weird saying week 3 is a must-win game, but especially going into a bye weekend, you're going to feel a lot better about yourself if you're 1-2 as opposed to 0-3. So what's the approach for all 4 of these teams as they head into this one?
Yeah, I mean, we alluded to it earlier that week 3 at times can be a must-win game for some teams. And I think for all 4 of these teams, we're kind of getting to that territory.
Feels that way, yeah.
And so, I think, like you said, I think getting out early and showing up early and getting a lead in this first half for all these teams is a key. I think, like you said, for the younger teams like the Heat and the Celtics to continue to run on these teams. But really, it's just staying true to who they are as a team. I think the Bulls are in a great spot. I still don't have much of a strong opinion on the Pistons because I haven't seen them yet. But I think all 4 of these teams need to show up and treat it as if it's a playoff game because coming back from an 0-3 start could lead you to maybe the 10 seed, and now you're looking at a tough route to that championship Sunday. So I'm very curious to see how these teams show up and kind of the resiliency from all four of these teams.
Yeah, it's a great point. Last year we had a, three-way, I guess, cluster there of 8 and 3 teams that finished second, third, and fourth. So again, you're in a league this deep, you're going to lose a lot of games. I think it'll be that way this year for sure. Again, some teams are sort of clustered, whether that's the 2 to 4 range or the 1 to 3 range or 3 to 6 range, whatever that is. But I think let's just take the Heat for example, or we can say the Celtics too. Celtics, let's say they do lose and go to 0-3. They play the Spurs in week 4. Let's say the Heat lose and go to 0-3. They've got the Nets and then the Spurs coming up. So not only do you hate to start that way, but you look at who you're playing. You're talking about just only digging yourself a deeper hole. So there's going to be some pressure on those teams, and I think those first 2 games are going to be good for that very reason. You're going to have to play with a sense of urgency this week, just with a lot on the line there. Game of the week, we would think. We'll see what happens there. 2 o'clock game. Lakers and Grizzlies are both 2-0. Let me say this before you preview the game. The Grizzlies get Chris White back on Sunday. I say back. He's never played in the league before. They get Chris White, brother of Chad, who's about 6'6", and as I'm hearing from some people on their team, he's just as athletic and skilled, if not more so. So you're talking about, the Lakers have the best guard play in the league, and it's not close. Basically, in my mind, you have probably 4 college-level guards that are going to play in this game on Sunday if they're all there. But I think probably the 3 biggest, most athletic sort of rebounding guys are all going to be on the Grizzlies side. Rich Kirk and the two White brothers if they're there. So the Grizzlies are athletic. They like to run and gun too. But what's the key in this game when you talk about sort of a slight contrast in the way the teams are constructed?
Yeah. I'm super excited for this one. I hope I get a call this one, Walt. I hope I get a call this one. I'll be sending you a text later this week, but I think the perimeter shooting is the biggest key for me. I unfortunately didn't get to watch much of the Grizzlies in week 1, but I know the Lakers have some of the best shooters and consistent perimeter scoring out of anyone in the league. So I think if the Lakers can hit their threes and if Brian's there and if they have their guys, I still think the Lakers are a slight favorite. But I love Chad White's game, and if he's anything. If Chris is anything like Chad, then they're going to be a tough matchup. Fortunately, the Lakers haven't had. They're the smallest team in the league, and they haven't had many teams take advantage of their size. The Warriors kind of did, but it didn't end up costing them. So we'll see if the height from the Grizzlies can cause some problems. But these two teams, I think, are very evenly matched in terms of up and down, getting the tempo of the game. It's going to be a high-scoring, up-tempo game. I'm super excited for this one. So hopefully it is a game of the week, and hopefully I can call it.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's hard to bet against the experience that the Lakers have around the perimeter, but we're excited to see the Grizzlies back. I'm sure they have felt real good in the off week here for them with those 2 big wins in week 1. So unlike the first game, and I should say the first 2 games where someone gets to 0-3, someone's getting to 3-0, and they're going to be sitting atop the standings halfway through week 3. Suns and the Bucks, and another just massive game at 3 o'clock. There is going to be, we'll let you see for yourself on Sunday, there's going to be some star power in this game, some really, really high-level players going at it. Both teams might get some guys there that we haven't seen yet this season, which can make it even more fun. I'm not going to go so far as to say that it's a must-win game for the Suns. Are you going to go so far as to say that?
I'm not, only because I know what the Suns can do. I'm going to say that right now. I think the Suns, if for some reason they lose this Sunday, they can still crank out 8 straight wins and get the 2 seed. I think they're that talented. They're that good. I think the rust is slowly shaking off for some of these guys. And if guys like Rashawn show up and the other guy from Derek Diaz, if these guys show up and start playing, there's not a team in the league that they can't beat. So if they for some reason lose this week, not saying they will, they can easily crank out 7 or 8 straight wins like they did last year, and they're in prime shape for that 2 or 3 seed. So I don't think it's a must-win game for the Suns, as much as it is for, maybe for the Bulls or the Heat, because they don't have that top level firepower that the Suns do. And yeah, like you said, I mean, we kind of got to see the fireworks from Billy Baptist this week. Him and if Jared Johnson shows, I mean, it's going to be just two dynamic players.
Yeah, we got to see that for a few minutes in the semis last year, and then Billy, for whatever reason, didn't get the ball passed to him for about 10 straight minutes. Now, I know Jared was face guarding him at half court in that game after he'd hit a few to start things off, but yeah.
It should be a great
that's
3
right.
o'clock
You
game.
say if for some reason the Suns lose, well, Billy might be that reason if it were to happen, so we'll see what happens there.
Mm-hmm.
It probably goes without saying it's going to be interesting to see CC playing against his former team.
Maybe some bad blood there, but maybe some motivation for both parties there.
And we've got that. Well. It doesn't feel like bad blood to me with Bolton, Mendy, and Chad coming over from the Lakers as much as just a better opportunity for them. But back-to-back rivalry games, we'll say it.
Yeah.
And probably the biggest rivalry game of the day, if not one of the year, is the 4 o'clock game. It just keeps getting better. The Warriors and the Spurs.
Talk about former teammates playing.
That's right.
Former rivals
not
against each other now.
Not bad blood there. Tyree and Latrell did not leave, as far as we know, on bad terms or anything. Just was a business decision to go back and play with Otis and try and win it on their own. But the last time the Spurs lost the game was October of 21 against the Warriors. Tyree had one of those games that he does every once in a while where he's unguardable no matter where he's at. And we haven't seen that yet from him. But the Warriors got a huge win against the Heat. Quan played well. You know what Tyree and Latrell are going to give you. It was good to have Chris Anderson there for them. Don't believe the Spurs will have Chris Green in this game. Might not have Dustin Redowance either. So it could give the Warriors a better chance if the Spurs are missing two of their starting guards, obviously. But to me, this is less about, drawing up the X's and O's as much as it's great to see Trey and Latrell go at it, Dennis and Tyree go at it, Quan and maybe some guys like Octavius or sure Marty Bothwell will be in the mix there defensively, as we love to see. But just some really good skilled players are going to go at it in this game, and I think a lot of people are going to be there to watch this one too.
I will give you one name to watch on my radar for this game. I think he's one of their better players, but KT Bobo is going to be a big name for the Spurs to watch out for. I don't think the Warriors have a player on their roster who can hang with him, maybe speed wise, just up and on the court, but also just the stamina. I mean, he can go all game. He'll probably be picking up full court, whoever's their point guard is, whether it's Tyree, whether it's Quan, but he's going to be their X factor. If they can get quick outlets to him and let him do his thing in transition, he could really cause some problems with his driving kick game, with his leak out game. I mean, that's kind of where he thrives. So be on the watch out for him to have a big game and be maybe a key factor if the Spurs are to win this game. But I think Tyree can put up 30 on anyone at any given night. So I think he might put it together. Watching the Warriors kind of figure it out that second half against the Heat give me a lot of optimism for them moving forward. So this should be a really, really good game.
I'm with you. And one of my favorite things to watch is when two really skilled bigs go at it in the K1 league. And so Latrell and Trey are as good as they come in that department.
The Warriors play zone, though? Will the Warriors play zone? They showed a lot of zone last week. I don't know if that was a matchup thing with the Heat, but we'll see moving forward because the Spurs have some zone busting shooters.
They
sure.
absolutely do, but there is a chance that a couple of those guys aren't there. So again, the mystery of who all shows up personnel wise, that's the K1 league for you. But I think the Warriors feel a lot better about where they're at now than they did after the first week. They were really kicking themselves for sort of blowing that 12-point lead there late in the second half. This isn't a must-win game for the Warriors, but I think it's, if anything, an opportunity to see can they stack up with where the Spurs are at, because it's a different Warriors team than we saw a year ago. But I know that they're going to be as excited for this one as all of us are. So definitely looking forward to that. And then another 2-0 team in the Nets takes on the 1-1 Rockets. I actually think you'll think I'm crazy. I think this is a sneaky chance to be the best game of the day.
Oof, I hope it is.
I think you're going to get 6 good games on Sunday. You don't always get that. But if the Nets continue to play like they have, they've got the chance to beat anybody. Can we get a little Tone Marshall on Martavius Laster shout out? I mean, Can't get enough of that.
No.
And if
Electric backcourt.
I mean, absolutely fantastic. There's going to be some outstanding guard play, fast paced. The Rockets can play faster in this one. They don't have to worry about the second game of a doubleheader. I think this is going to be an outstanding game, and I think the Rockets can match up size wise. If you get Hunter Jacobs to this game, I give the Rockets every bit of a chance to play with the Nets in this one.
Yeah, I won't go as far to say as it's not quite a coin flip game to where I think the Nets maybe are slightly favored. I think that second half that they saw, I'm very excited to see them, like, how they respond to that momentum they had. I mean, basically a game that wasn't a loss, but I mean it looked pretty bad, and then they went on that huge run and kind of stole it. A win like that could give a team like the Nets some confidence moving forward. So maybe they take that into this game, and I think it gives them a slight edge. But I do think Antonio Marshall is one of, if not the best guards in the league. So he'll definitely carry a little offensively for the Rockets, and should keep it close. I mean, again, I'm curious to see who shows for the Rockets. But I think the Nets, man, that win against the Suns was so big. I think it might give them the slight edge in this one for me.
Yeah, the thing the Nets, and I think the reason the Nets are favored is the experience.
Yep.
The youth of the Rockets and the uncertainty of playing in this league could definitely plague them, but maybe they'll grow up fast and overcome that. It is going to be hard, as the Nets potentially keep winning and winning, hard to pick against them. You've got, I mean, in my opinion, no offense to you as a coach of a team, but the most veteran and probably the most experienced and wise coach out there, and Jerry Chills Wills, he leads his team well.
Yeah.
And they're clicking on all cylinders right now. If they can continue to share the ball and all play unselfish, the Nets are tough. So it's kind of like veterans against rookies a little bit in this one. Not all the guys on the Rockets are that way, but if we can see Harry Marshall or Hunter Jacobs in this one, you mark my words, you better not leave before the end of the day. Week 3, we've had this circled for a while. It's going to be an electric week. So, again, I think you're going to get 6 really good games on Sunday, and you're going to have some teams playing pretty much for their life.
I think so.
Even though it's August basketball. So, what a start to the season. 5 undefeated teams after week 2. At most, there can only be 4, but I have a feeling that you're going to have less than 4 after week 3. So, Caleb Johnson, appreciate you joining us.
Yeah.
We'll be back with you again on Sunday, and then we'll be off for Labor Day weekend. So we'll be with you at 12 o'clock, starting off with the Pistons and the Celtics, followed by the Heat and the Bulls, with the Lakers, Grizzlies in an undefeated matchup for Game of the Week. And then Suns, Bucks, Warriors, Spurs, finish it off with the Nets and Rockets. Lots of storylines, lots of firepower. Hope to see you at the gym Sunday, August 28th, 12 o'clock.
Should be an outstanding day of basketball. I'm looking forward to it, John.
There's absolutely our hope. Well, we thank you all for joining us. And for Jonathan Henschel, Caleb Johnson, we'll be back with you next week.